Hey guys, what's going on? So for whatever reason, I'm really feeling the need to talk about this today. Quick 30-second backstory. I just left the gym, did my morning cardio. While I was there, I was talking to somebody about the IFBB Tampa Pro that took place last weekend. We were talking about Hunter Labrada, which is who won the show, and he has made significant improvements over the past, I would say definitely within the past year, but even if you look bigger scheme, more in the past like 4 or 5 years. And one of the things that he has talked about openly, and also was talking about on his Instagram story last night, was that he only competed like 5 times as an amateur before he turned pro. And then after he turned pro, then he had a huge progression phase, and then he just won his pro debut. I was also talking about this last night at somebody at work. Somebody came in at work that I hadn't seen in a long time. He competed, I guess, in powerlifting. And he was talking about the coronavirus and how the coronavirus like threw him off his schedule, and he thinks he's gonna quit competing now because he can't get back into routine and everything, which is a different, I don't want to talk about his attitude, but he started talking about how he had competed so much and in such a short amount of time that he had mentally and physically burned himself out from competing, and he wanted to quit. And he was, I don't know his age. I would assume he's probably in his late 20s, so I can't assume he's very old. Not really relevant, but and then also I made a post on Instagram yesterday talking about progressions, and how for most of us, progressions in the weight room specifically was the topic of that post, are gonna come in really small steps that are taken over time. So all three of these things have kind of happened within a 24-hour period, which to me is kind of like leading to one central point. So I'm really feeling the need to talk about this today in the parking lot of a grocery store. So if I look at people, it's because they're looking at me crazy. Anyways, okay. So here's the main point. Something that I think a lot of people are failing to realize. Now this, I'm going to be talking more so to physique athletes, competitors, but this is also applicable to Olympic lifters and power lifters who compete, which I'll get to in a few minutes. But especially with bodybuilding, men and women, male and female, more so female, it is very important to remember that each competitor, each person has a shelf life. There is only so many times over the course of your lifetime, especially in bodybuilding, where you can really do what you need to do in order to be your best on show day. Now, I understand that competitive powerlifting and competitive Olympic lifting, you can compete more times per year and you can compete more frequently because the prep for a powerlifting meet or for an Olympic lifting meet isn't as physically demanding as a bodybuilding prep is, simply because the entire aspect of dieting yourself to the point of near death like adds a whole element into bodybuilding that isn't there for powerlifting and Olympic lifting. Yeah, some powerlifters, some Olympic lifters may need to diet to get themselves into a weight class, but they don't need to literally suck themselves down to the point of death so that they can look a certain way on stage. You can only do that so many times. And so a couple things, if you're doing that, you're hitting that button, you're hitting the competition button very frequently in a short amount of time. Physically, going back to my point that I made yesterday, human beings are not robots. We cannot linearly progress for a long amount of time. That is something that you can do as a beginner. It is not something that you can extend over, let's say, your first 2 years. You really can't do that. So if you are hitting that button frequently, all the time, you're gonna compete for 4 years, 5 years, and then you're gonna be fucking done because you physically and mentally can't handle anymore. Now, let's say you have a 4-year career. That's not even a career, but a 4-year span of competing. How much progress do you realistically think that you made from day one to the very last day of that 4-year period, if the majority of that time you were feeling physically and mentally drained because you were constantly killing yourself by getting ready for competition. Also, what is really important to me when I look at competitors is their jumps from competition to competition. You know, 1 year somebody may compete at 160 pounds, and then they compete 2 years later at 173 pounds, and then they compete 2 years later at 185 pounds. That, to me, less competitions, but significant improvement made between each one, is far more impressive and paints a much better picture for the scope of someone's career than someone who competes once a year, every year, and they compete at 160 pounds, and then 161 pounds, and they come 162, and then 160, and then 159, and then 164, and they have a lot more competition experience, but the quality of that competition experience is shit in comparison to somebody who is taking their time in between each competition to improve. For powerlifters and so the example that I just gave was a bodybuilding example. For powerlifters and Olympic lifters, I'll use powerlifting here. Imagine your first meet, your total is 1,000 pounds. I'm gonna pick even numbers because they're easy to remember. And then you compete 3 months later, and your total, lost it. All right, you compete 3 months later, and your total is 1,010. And then you compete 2 months later and your total is 1,020. Then your total is 1,030 2 months later, whatever. Versus somebody who competes at their first meet, they get 1,000-pound total, and then they may take a year off until they compete again, and then their next total is 1,080. And then they take another year off, and then their next total is 1,155. I'm just picking random numbers. The point that you are seeing is that generally, the more time that we take in between competitions, the more improvement is made from competition 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5, etc. over the course of a career. And what you're going to look at after you compare that multiple times is somebody who's, I hope this is going the right way, the way that I have my camera set up, somebody whose trajectory for their career, like where they start, their potential, over the course of 3-4 competitions, and those 3-4 competitions taking place over 5 to 8 years, depending on your sport, instead of making really slow progress like this, but competing very frequently, you may start making significant increases like this. Now, here's the thing about all of that. So it sounds good. Obviously, we're going to take more time in between competitions. We're going to get better competition progress because of that. If that's so simple to do, why do people not do it? And the main thing that this really falls down to now is the fucking social media Instagram age. There are a lot of people who are competing, whether it's powerlifting, whether it's bodybuilding, whether it's Olympic lifting. They are competing for the wrong reasons. They are competing for gratification and satisfaction off of social media and to fit into a clique. Okay, we see this in commercial gyms nowadays. I'm not going to call people out. Go into any commercial and whatever. If you like this, then you like it. But if the shoe fits, then fucking wear it. If you go into any corporate gym in the country right now, I would say half of the guys in there are wearing a combination of, or one of these, Gymshark, Alphalete, Ghost, blah, 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 blah. And the point that I'm trying to make with all of this is there are a lot of people who are in fitness in general for the wrong reasons, to try to fit into a clique, to try and fit into a social media acceptance circle, to feel like they belong to something. And this is really going to be one of those things that's going to gut check you about whether you're competing or whether you're in fitness in general for the right reasons. Is, can you mentally handle taking 2 to 3 years off between each competition so that you know the next time that you step on stage or the next time you get on the platform, yeah, it may be 3 years from now, and you may not have any cool competition pictures to post in the meantime of those 3 years to get a bunch of likes and comments and all that bullshit. But you know, as a competitor, that your performance is going to be significantly better in the competitions the later that you take. And if you're competing for the right reasons, that's what it's all about anyways, is fucking making progress and making sure that you are heading into a position where you can hopefully win, right? That's all we can really ask for at the end of the day. As a competitor, if you show up to a meet and there's somebody better than you, there's somebody better than you. You can't make any fucking excuses. What you have to do is you need to nut up and you need to get better. And for a lot of us, going with the post that I made yesterday, we're not going to put 20 pounds of stage weight on in a year. We're not going to put 150 pounds on our total in 1 year. That process, 20 pounds of stage weight, 150 pounds on our total, is going to take, for some people, 3, for some people, 5. That's just the reality of it. So the moral of this story, the moral of this rant, is to gut check yourself. If you're a competitor right now or aspiring to compete, gut check yourself. Make sure that you are doing this for the right reasons. And if you're doing this for the right reasons, then your results will follow.